All right, I've got 101 Central, so we will go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Welcome to my Parlor, the tangled web of compatible imaging supplies, brought to you by Clover Imaging Group. My name is Tim Cahill. I'm the Inside Sales Manager with Clover, and I'm going to be your host today. But before I introduce our presenter, I do want to go over a few quick housekeeping notes. All of our attendees are in listen-only mode, so if you do have any questions, please type them into the Q&A section, and they will be answered in the order that they come in. Once a question is answered, the question and its respective answer will become visible to all audience members. Also, this webinar is being recorded, so if you have a hard stop or if anyone in your organization is unable to attend today, we will provide the full presentation recording via email. In fact, this is actually our 7th webinar series since we began, and if you've missed any of them, all the recordings are available for you to view on your dashboard of the cloverimaging.com website. With that, I have the pleasure of introducing our presenter, Trisha Judge. If you're unfamiliar with Trisha, she is the Executive Director of the International Imaging Technology Council and is an industry pioneer as well as accomplished attorney. Trisha is without a doubt a unique subject matter expert in both the category and the global industry, and in addition has submitted briefs to both the district and Supreme Courts of our great nation. Please welcome Trisha Judge.
Thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you to everyone who took some time out of their busy schedules to join us. So come on into my parlor, and I'll introduce you to the players. Next slide. And the predatory spiders and the innocent flies. Sellers of counterfeit cartridges. Now, these are really bad players, and flies must avoid their products because to sell them is a crime. They're fairly easy to spot and should be avoided at all costs. Sellers of clone cartridges are not so easy to spot. Clones are new cartridges that are truly copies of OEM new ones. They have not been cleared for IP issues. One I visited had rolls of labels that you could choose from that read new or remanufactured, so you could choose how to incorrectly label your products of choice. There are unscrupulous sellers of poor quality Asian-made new build cartridges, and that's the acronym NBC. These are cartridges that may have undergone some vetting for IP clearance or performance, but it's hard to tell. And finally, the OEMs are the guys that manufacture cartridges under their brand names like HP, Canon, Epson, and Lexmark, and they sell them at a premium price. They make more money on their supplies than they do on their printer sales, so they want you to buy only from them and will try to trick or even con you into doing so. And now for the flies. Well, they're you. They're consumers, they're business and government users, they're resellers and dealers. And the venue, of course, the World Wide Web has become the chief lair for these predator spiders. Well-intentioned consumers are bombarded with invitations to buy cartridges for less than $10 when they have historically paid, twice or 3 times or much more than that. They want to know why, and I'm going to explain why. Next slide. But before I get into that, as a lawyer, my presentation wouldn't be complete without a disclaimer. I have thousands of hours representing and advocating for the remanufacturing industry over 23 years, and I have written hundreds of articles about the cartridge industry's legal issues, societal concerns, and political activities. However, I am neither a genius nor do I have a crystal ball. I will set forth the legal issues in law as I understand them to be, and I will set forth the technological impediments as they have been told to me. And therefore, I am rendering my opinion in this presentation, and these are my suggestions only, born of being a lawyer for 35 years and having had the good fortune to visit all the countries and many manufacturers herein. So I also want to say something else. I do not work for Clover. They are and have been a fine member among many other members that I serve. And in case you don't know me and wonder what I look like, I have included this photo of members of the Owners' Rights Initiative lobbying in DC a few years ago. I'm the one in the middle in the front who looks like she's got George's foot on her head. And I'm still smiling because I like being underfoot. Next slide, please. So what is a clone printer cartridge? Well, we have all kinds of terms in our vernacular, and sometimes they cross over. New molded clone cartridges are, like I said, they are truly clones of new OEM ones. They've not been cleared for IP issues. Compatible is a term that is used universally across all types of cartridges. It just means that the cartridges work in or are compatible with the printer. For our purposes, it refers to all aftermarket cartridges. New build cartridges, and NBCs, as they're sometimes called, may have been vetted for IP, and they may have a legitimate place in your product line, particularly in older models where patents are expiring, especially if they have the endorsement and are supplied by a legitimate international ITC member. Now, counterfeit clones and some NBCs are made using subpar raw materials. And clones and some NBCs are frequent targets of OEM intellectual property lawsuits. The used empties of clones and NBCs are a burden on legitimate remanufacturers who must divert them from their remanufacturing operations to comply with the right to repair and the OEM intellectual property. Because they cannot be remanufactured, they often end up in a landfill. For those of you who don't know, a remanufactured cartridge is a cartridge that has completed its first useful life as an OEM cartridge and is remanufactured and restored to its original performance. Remanufacturing of cartridges is a science and has been around for more than 40 years. Clover is obviously a remanufacturer, but perhaps you didn't know that they are the world's largest remanufacturer. And the photos in the right are of a small town in China that I visited in the mid-2000s. It used to be an agrarian community, but no more. Its industry now involves the disassembly of toner and ink cartridges for the metals they contain, and then the empties are burned. Burning styrene is not a good idea. The water is no longer potable, and a large percentage of the children that live there have respiratory illnesses. Diverting these cartridges for reuse and remanufacturing is clearly a far better outcome for everyone. Next slide. Let's talk about counterfeits for just a second and why you should care. Counterfeiting, we lose 3 to 4% of the entire marketplace to counterfeiting. Now that may not sound like a lot, but it's $3 billion in lost legitimate sales. And counterfeiters don't care about quality. They make their money on their duplicitous sale, so they're gone. The cartridges may bear IP, health, safety, and environmental concerns. They steal business from legitimate players like remanufacturers and OEMs, and the cartridges are often returned to the OEMs because they normally have quality issues. And those OEMs may say that they are remanufactured products, lumping in good legitimate cartridges with illegal ones. And counterfeits give customers another reason to dislike remanufactured products as a result. So if someone offers to sell you a new OEM at a price that is way too good to be true, use your common sense and run away. The Imaging Supplies Coalition is a group of OEMs that targets counterfeiters and conducts raids and police activity around the world. We have a partnership with them and help them find counterfeits when they show up here in North America. They also run a program called WIDCO, When in Doubt, Check It Out. And they have put Amazon, eBay, and others on notice when it comes to selling counterfeits. So just avoid counterfeits. They're criminal. Stay away. Next slide, please.
Trisha, before we go to the next slide, I would like to just propose a couple questions because I know that the content in this presentation will build off of itself. So just a couple clarity questions. First of which, what does IP stand for?
Oh, intellectual property. We lawyers love our
Excellent.
acronyms.
All right, and then our other one is, can remanufactured cartridges be remanufactured again, or is it a one-time process?
That's a really good question for a remanufacturer. However, it's my understanding that some cartridges can be remanufactured several times over. I had one company that explained to me how they remanufacture certain SKUs up to 8 times.
Wow. All righty, that's what we got for now. So I will turn it back over to you, Trisha. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're delving into my neck of the woods, which is the legal history and precedent set in this marketplace. The right to repair doctrine has long protected remanufactured cartridges. They cannot be assessed of claims of patent infringement because you have the right to repair your car, your computer, and your cartridge. The issue was well settled in the mid-90s after a variety of lawsuits. But the OEMs haven't given up. They've tried a variety of clever marketing schemes to dissuade consumers from buying aftermarket products, particularly through post-sale restrictions using their intellectual property. This gave rise to a variety of lawsuits as well. So in 2017, the cartridge remanufacturing industry presented the US Supreme Court with the case that would change patent law dramatically. That was the case of Impression Products versus Lexmark. The US Supreme Court decided that the first sale of a product exhausted all patent rights, whether the cartridge was first sold, whether the item was first sold domestically or overseas. And this case specifically involved printer cartridges, so we know that it applies to us. The decision is a slam dunk ending in favor of the aftermarket over Lexmark's prebate return program. And the industry's fight with Lexmark over these issues had gone on for 2 days and cost millions. As a result, cores and cartridges can be remanufactured, collected overseas for importation into the United States. And of course, domestic remanufacturing is protected as well. So while remanufactured cartridges have had legal clouds lifted, there are some ominous ones that loom on the horizon for compatible cartridges. In the early 2000s, the Chinese new build cartridges and clones started showing up and taking market share. The remanufacturers waited impatiently for Canon to protect its huge portfolio of intellectual property and to help restore the marketplace. But Canon took its time and finally sued manufacturers and distributors of new built cartridges over a dongle gear. After quite a while of fighting, the Canon finally secured a general exclusion order from the United States International Trade Commission. Now, general exclusion order is unusual. Usually the ITC gives out limited exclusion orders because they don't want to interfere with international trade. A limited exclusion order means that the only the offending cartridges coming from the specific defendant will be stopped. But however, Asian manufacturers have a history of circumventing limited exclusion orders by rebranding and repackaging their products. So this necessitated the general exclusion order. Since the dongle gear litigation, Canon has become very active in suing over imports. And Canon has demonstrated interesting choice for its targets, but it has the money and an ocean of patents and plenty of lawyers. So in August of 2019, Brother joined the party. They have been reasonably quiet when it comes to defending their intellectual property, but they filed a complaint with the Trade Commission against 32 Asian-based cartridge producers and individuals that have allegedly been infringing their patents. In November of 2020, the USITC issued a final determination and another general exclusion order, along with 20 cease and desist orders. Those orders became final in January of this year. And Epson has also been very active in the ITC arena and has garnered several general exclusion orders and limited exclusion orders. So it's really important that you are aware of the status of these products and also the status of the people that you are importing from. Next slide, please. And Canon has also been active in working with Amazon in taking down products that they feel are infringing from the Amazon website. Starting in 2018, Canon and other OEMs started ordering that clones be removed based on IP infringement. In just the first half of 2020, Canon had a total of 3,000 cartridges removed from 10 countries, and they are delineated there for your reading pleasure. Canon has tallied up all the listings of successful removals of allegedly infringing cartridges that have been sold via online, and they have come, like I said, to 3,092 cartridges. And they have also sent out more than 200 cease and desist letters, and that's just in the first few months of 2021. They are very active at reviewing cartridges sold on the web, and they have become very active in assuring their takedown. Well, that's all well and good, but what about your liability? The next slide, please. There's no such thing as an innocent infringer. You import cartridges from an unknown source, and unbeknownst to you, they violate Canon's intellectual property, and you get a nasty letter in the mail saying that you're about to be sued. Can they sue you? The answer is yes, they can. In the late 2000s, Lexmark named hundreds of innocent infringers in its lawsuit and extracted millions in licensing fees from unsuspecting remanufacturers and dealers. With profits squeezed, OEMs are going to continue to enforce and protect this lucrative revenue stream. Will Canon continue its rollover, the new build invasion? Probably, given the tens of thousands of patents it has in its arsenal. It's never been more important to know your suppliers, and it's never been more likely that you can be an innocent infringer in today's marketplace. Next slide, please.
Before we go, there's a couple questions regarding the legality of clones. One of them is that for the conversation or argument rather regarding NBCs versus Reman, it seems that frustration seems to be arising from the lack of progress made from the GEOs and lawsuits issued. Is there anything on the horizon that would tip the scales when it comes to IP?
Well, that's a really good question. I guess I'd need to ask if the frustration is because they are not getting enough of the products off the shelf. I know that the OEMs work directly with US Customs, and there are so many borders and so many points of entry in the United States that it's very hard to get through to every single one of them and educate them as is needed. But the OEMs are actively trying to do that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that answers the question, but my email is going to be at the end of this presentation along with my phone number. So I would happily take questions from people whose questions I don't get to or whose questions I answer incorrectly.
All right, and then we got a couple more. How can we identify a counterfeit cartridge if our customers are buying them?
Oh, well, that is really hard to do because they do a beautiful job of copying these cartridges right on down to the stamped made in Japan. I mean, it's very difficult to identify a counterfeit cartridge, but that's where that WIDCO program comes in. When in doubt, check it out. I would be more than happy to take a cartridge and get it to the OEMs and have them take a look at it and determine whether it's a counterfeit. There are programs in place to do just that, and I encourage you to use them.
Excellent. And then the next, I'll group these next questions together because they're regarding Amazon. You posted the success regarding the Amazon takedowns, but a lot of the results seem to be overseas. Is the USA being impacted and policed? If so, is it going to have any impact on remanufactured listings on Amazon?
Good question. Yes, there have been a number of takedowns ordered here in the US. Those 200 cease and desist letters that I mentioned, those were to US or to sellers on the US website. I don't know where they're based, but the problem with Amazon is it's so flexible. It moves so quickly, and these predatory sellers can, they've got very clever ways at moving and changing their names, and you're constantly playing a game of hide and seek. So I'm not sure how the US marketplace is being impacted vis-a-vis the others, but I know that Canon and the OEMs and the Imaging Supplies Coalition are all over Amazon and trying to get these particular bad clone sellers off the marketplace. Now, how has it affected Reman? There have been some calls to remanufacturers from Amazon verifying the status of the products they sell. And that's not fun when those calls come because it means you're being investigated. But we've helped a couple of our members get through some of those investigations, and they'll keep coming at us at a case-by-case basis.
All right, thank you very much, Trisha. That's the majority of the questions we've got so far regarding legal, so I will turn things back over to you. Okay,
next slide. There we go. Getting away from the legalities and moving now to the health and safety of these cartridges. In Europe, they are light years ahead of us on legislating preferences or mandates for environmental products. Our sister association in Europe is ETIRA, which is the European Toner and Ink Cartridge Remanufacturers Association. And they conduct annual investigation into new builds and clones. And in 2019, they found large quantities of the flame retardant DecaBDE in new built cartridges. DecaBDE is a known carcinogen so powerful that the largest commercial producers and suppliers themselves have agreed to phase out this chemical. It's also been banned in most European countries and in several US states. It's a known carcinogen that, when heated, can be potentially released into the air. And clearly, in the electrophotographic process, internal elements of the cartridge heat up to 130 to 180 degrees centigrade, thereby heating the DecaBDE-laden cartridge and potentially releasing these nasties into the air. Now, the next year, ETIRA issued a report on toner, and its findings, which I'm about to read, are that once again, cheap new build toners purchased off the internet have been found to have serious health concerns. These cartridges have been manufactured with toner that emits unacceptable levels of benzene, cobalt, and naphthalene. Of the new build cartridges tested, all of them failed. Of the locally remanufactured cartridges that were also tested, all of them received passing grades in both tests. The study was involving cartridges that were bought off of Amazon, and they detected levels as high as 157% above acceptable levels. And this stuff enters the airways and can cause genetic defects, cancer, damage to organs. Cobalt can cause allergy and asthmatic symptoms. Naphthalene, detected in amounts as high as 650% above the acceptable threshold, is suspected of causing cancer. And again, in order for toner to reach its melting point, it is routinely heated up to 356 degrees to complete the printing process. Therefore, the contaminants in toner are emitted and can go out into the office or home environment through printer vents. So the International Imaging Technology Council, my organization, is working in North America to monitor these issues and works with government and consumer watchdog groups, just as ATIRA does in Europe. With government now ever more deeply involved in making our workplaces safe and healthy, this issue is going to be a hotspot. These products are bad for public health, for the commerce, and for the environment. Next slide. And the OEMs, of course, jumped on these reports to the detriment of legitimate remanufacturers because we were lumped in with all aftermarket cartridges. But as Xerox pointed out on their website, this particular problem with the styrene and the Deca-BDE, they found that the volatile organic compounds were up to 16,510% higher in new builds. Next slide. And of recent, security has become an issue. Well, it's always been an issue, but now with chips on all of our cartridges, they are even more subject to scrutiny. Every cartridge has a chip or an e-patch. These have legitimate purposes, such as monitoring toner level or other feature performance, but they can be hacked and they can therefore be a gateway to your data. HP has initiated the Bug Bounty program, in which it employs white hats to hack into printers using third-party chips on third-party cartridges. Now, let me just point out that the OEM chips can be hacked too, which is probably why HP set up this program. HP claims that Asian-made chips can be manipulated and hacked away and are the gateway to you and your customers' data. And given the current mistrust about Asian use of our data, it gives you one more facet of concern about Asian suppliers. Some governments are adopting a zero trust policy regarding these chips. So you have to choose a partner that tests every cartridge to protect yourself. And you have to look for products that are TAA compliant. And also, oh, go back, please. Tim? You have to make sure that they are TAA compliant and that indemnification contracts are in place with your suppliers, but sometimes those indemnification contracts with Asian countries are hard to enforce. Seriously, if you can go and visit the partner and go through their testing protocols, thank you, Tim, and ask questions and get to really know them, all the better, because security issues are ones that, you're going to have to prove a chain of custody if there's a problem, and all the better if you can know where your cartridge and its chips have come from and have been. So now let's go to the next slide. Okay, it's been my privilege to advocate for the cartridge remanufacturing industry for the past 30 years, because it's like advocating for mom, apple pie, and everything else that's good. Remanufacturing is good for the environment, obviously, because it diverts industrial plastics and metals from landfills. It's good for consumers because it offers them an alternative to OEM new and their high prices. For a long time, Reman cartridges were the only alternative to new and the only way to keep the OEM from overpricing its supplies. It's also good for local economies because the cartridge dealers that sell remanufactured products tend to be locally based and therefore contributed to their local economy's multiplier effect. And as you can see at the bullet points on the screen, Clover alone reclaims more than 37 million ink and toner cartridges every year. Remans use less natural resources and have a lower environmental impact than new builds. And they contribute substantially to your customers' sustainability or environmental responsibility programs. Compatibles cannot be remanufactured, as I said before, and therefore end up in landfills where they can take tens of thousands of years to decompose. China has a poor track record on pollution, and the government is trying to reverse that trend with shutdowns of tens of thousands of factories. What if that factory is one that's producing cartridges that you rely on? And also, Blue Angel and Stmc certifications have falsely been claimed by some Asian manufacturers. We at the ITC have gone after the STM certification counterfeiters and have done a good job, but they crop up almost monthly. And just to do a little more shining on Clover here, on a monthly basis, Clover's cartridge collection programs collect enough cartridges to create a line of them that would stretch from Chicago to New York City, roughly 700 miles. And over the last 10 years, they've diverted 450 million pounds of industrial waste from landfills. That's roughly the weight of 2 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. And Reman's catching on. Government likes all of the good things that Reman offers. Last week, Italy announced that it will now have a 30% Reman cartridge requirement. Contracting authorities purchasing cartridges will need to ensure that their tenders include at least 30% remanufactured cartridges in their buying mix. So they're not just the safe choice, but they're the right choice. Next slide, please. So why remanufactured versus the clones? Well, cheap new builds use inferior grade plastics that just don't have the durability or integrity of OEM plastics, and they may fail to meet health and safety regulations, like I said. Making a cartridge from scratch involves finite mold casting. How can you invest in the essential R&D to manufacture these cartridge shells to these demanding specifications and pay the attorneys to ensure that all patent protections are circumvented, and then charge $3 a cartridge? Beyond the cartridge shell, there are important technologies that the domestic market took decades to command. And then there are the toner and the chips and the other highly technical components. It's just hard to fathom how some of these incredibly cheap cartridges can possibly have all the protection you need to sell them with security. And also, you've got the problem of what they can do to the printer. And then if they don't deliver, they will have lower page yield, uneven quality, and you're going to have to address those issues. Plus, the supply chains are lengthy. You have to wait until that side of the world is open to get what you need in the way of help and customer service, or even technical support. And in many cases, the IP is infringed, which leaves the resellers vulnerable. Next slide. Now, because of the environmental sustainability of remanufactured cartridges, several countries and states have passed laws giving remanufactured cartridges a preference in purchasing. Back in the late 1990s, the International ITC had legislation pending for Reman cartridge preferences or mandates in more than half of the states in the US. And those laws are still on the books and could stand to be enforced better. Remanufactured cartridges satisfy purchasing requirements in the federal government sector, as well as those with environmental compliance requirements, because they do business with the government. Support local economies. The remanufactured cartridges help support local economies by keeping businesses and manufacturing jobs in North America. And we have a much shorter, more stable supply chain. you may be buying from somebody who's one state over, and that makes it a lot easier to get your problem solved. Next slide, please. So what if? What if an OEM gets its GEO and importation of clones are interrupted? Or the US refuses importation of your supplier's cartridges and they're stuck in customs? Or a clone doesn't fit into your customer's printer? Or the quality of the cartridge you sell are surreptitiously checked and the news is really bad? Or the chips on the cartridges are deemed insecure by a customer and they want to know more about where they're from? You're sued for selling infringing cartridges, lots of them. And your supplier has changed its name and disappeared. I want to talk about that for a second. I was in China in 2016 and visited a beautiful cartridge manufacturer. And I've also been in other Asian countries and had similar situations. So it's not just China. But this particular spot had a wonderfully nice management and staff. We bonded quickly. Even with the language barrier, I could see that they had an amazing, beautiful operation with a pretty production line and an impressive testing laboratory and some very expensive testing equipment. And I was deeply impressed. And I thought, well, maybe I've found a company in Asia that I can, refer people to or that I can trust. But within 6 months of returning home, all of the people that I had interfaced with at that company were no longer there. Some were with other companies over in Asia. Some had just scattered to the wind. So how could I, in good faith, recommend them? And I couldn't. So as I've mentioned, the Chinese and the Asians are making some good new build cartridges, but the market itself is in a state of flux and gentrification is happening slowly. Sourcing a quality IP-free NBC is a little like playing whack-a-mole from the other side of the globe. You really need to have a partner that you know and trust that has the bandwidth to look at all of the options and find ones that are, problem-proof. And now that the safety of Asian and security of Asian cloned cartridges is questioned or worse tested, you really need to be careful. Now, what if your supplier is shut down by the Federal Trade Commission for improper sales techniques? That's Operation Boss out of the FTC, which targets office supplies and is always monitoring sales efforts. All of these scenarios, folks, all of them are real. They have happened since I have been running the international ITC, and I have had to help these folks deal with these monstrous problems. These are business threatening problems. So, please keep that in mind. And next slide, please.
Trisha, before we get to the next slide, I'd like to, this slide raised a couple of questions. The first of which is, are there any legitimate OEM cartridges or Reman cartridges that are made in China?
I think there are some manufacturers of OEM products in China, but I don't know that. That's beyond, I wish I did know that. I should know that probably. And I would believe that's the case. There's a lot of manufacturing going on in China, and I assume it's carefully overseen by the OEMs themselves. As for remanufacturers in China, yes, for years there were remanufacturers in China who were licensed by the government. And I don't know who they are anymore. I certainly know that at the beginning, Arnold Ho and Printright were active in remanufacturing. I don't know what the status is of the various Chinese remanufacturers anymore. I hope they're still out there, and I hope they're pumping out Reman cartridges because that's just good for the environment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then the other question is, has the Reman Council considered a third-party BLI safety examination of new build clones, or are they anticipating one in the future?
Have we, no, BLI Buyer's Lab, I assume is what they're talking about.
Yeah, has the ITC used a third party such as BLI to test these new builds?
for years, well, first of all, let me just flat out say, I wish we had those resources. We need membership. We need membership and people that want to get excited about this and get involved and help raise the kind of funds we could use for a process like that. I did undertake one third-party testing of new builds right after Atira did theirs. I used Applied Technical Lab down in Georgia and found very much the same kind of sad outcome that Atira did. As far as testing new builds, remans, all the and OEM cartridges, we worked for years with Rochester Institute of Technology in their imaging lab. And I know that a lot of third-party companies went directly to them as well. And they also have a program where they work with buyers that will pull cartridges off the shelf and test them. That's why one of the what-ifs is, the safety of your cartridges tested and questioned. That can be happening to you and you wouldn't know it. I would love to have a more structured testing program with Rochester Institute of Technology or Buyers Lab or anyone that, we could set something like that up with. Again, it's about dollars and we don't have them.
Excellent. Thank you, Trisha.
So that's a nice segue into us. Since 1996, the International ITC has represented the interests of imaging supplies, the imaging supplies industry, and it's not just about remanufacturers. Yes, I love to sing the song of remanufacturers, but we also have many other types of members in our membership, including service and repair folks, office supply retail, computer retail, networking companies. I checked and our membership is really more 50% Reman and 50% resellers, folks that resell remanufactured and other imaging supplies and don't reman themselves. We welcome those folks. We want strength in numbers. We want a robust association. And so the more voices we have, the better for us. And so please consider joining. Our website, I don't know if it's on the last slide, but I'll be happy to share it. It's i-itc.org, and it has information about us up there, but I'll give you some more now. We defend the industry through news distribution, lobbying efforts, and other industry government programs that assist in fighting unfair competition. Our advocacy initiatives target unfair OEM activities, counterfeiters, and manufacturers of clone cartridges. We promote the industry and its product through education of institutional buyers, government purchasers, and ultimately the consumers. We also educate our members via our many media partnership, especially our current one with RT Media. And we work with state and federal buyers. Working with state and federal buyers, the International ITC has brought millions of dollars in business to aftermarket dealers. As you mentioned, I've drafted 6 friend of the court briefs for cases before the US Supreme Court. And we also enhance the business of imaging supplies dealers by promoting standardized test methods and other performance proving programs. And through the promotion of best practice, the International ITC helps dealers sell more and better quality cartridges. Remanufacturing has recently been recognized as a preferred industry, one that the government wants to develop and expand. Next slide. And so through an alliance with the other remanufacturing associations, we have become even more active in seeing to it that remanufacturing is recognized as the important industry that it is. We were a founding member of the Remanufacturing Association Alliance, which brings together the associations mentioned at the bottom of the slide to support Reman. And that's everything from the automotive aftermarket to aeronautics to production engines. Remanufacturing generates revenue of $36 billion and diverts 3.1 million tons of waste from landfills. That's impressive. Together, we established Reman Day, which is on April 8th this year. We've got all sorts of activities planned. For instance, we have several government officials initiating proclamations heralding Reman on that day. If you want to get involved in the fun, again, let me know. And we are working on establishing federal manufacturing codes just for remanufactured products. That will give us evidence, stronger evidence as to our commercial strength. And we are working on ANSI standards for remanufacturing, all to the benefit of remanufactured products and its legion of customers. And the next slide, please. And speaking of standards, there is a suite of standardized tests that are highly recognized in 83 countries and are sought by cartridge remanufacturers, manufacturers and remanufacturers alike, and that is Stmc certification. The Stmc logo is issued only to producers that prove they have mastered the tests that are in the Stmc guide and use them routinely in their testing for quality control. For 25 years, the International Imaging Technology Council has administered and monitored the Stmc program, and we have fought for those who use it proudly and against those who misuse it. Stmc certification proves that the company certified uses the highest industry-approved standards in manufacturing its cartridges. The Stmc logo means that the cartridge in the box has been remanufactured by a company that really cares about quality. Stmc itself is a global committee formed to find and promote standardized test methods for the printer cartridge industry. Customers demand Stmc, so much so that, as I mentioned, it's been found as a counterfeit mark on several boxes. We cannot sell to many entities, you cannot sell to many entities in some regions without Stmc certification. For example, the Texas Department of Transportation will only purchase cartridges that are Stmc approved. And it's no surprise that this certification is so popular in Italy right now. So look for this mark and certainly partner with someone who manufactures under this mark. And also, we maintain a list of Stmc certified companies on our website. So if you don't know for sure, if you're looking at a counterfeit Stmc logo, you can jump on our website, look up the company and see if they are truly, legitimately Stmc certified. Next slide, please. So here's a printer buying checklist for you. Has the cartridge's performance been tested against the OEM? Stmc certified companies can give you this data on 3 key components, on page yield, on image density, and on backgrounding. Does my selection support the environment? What is its recycled content and what is the proof? And what are my recycling options after the cartridge is empty? Can it be remanufactured or recycled? And am I supporting the circular economy? Can I quantify my savings in comparison to selling OEM new? Is my company safe or exposed to risk liability if I buy clones? Are there any pending lawsuits against the manufacturer? Can I locate the manufacturer's website? Can I read the manufacturer's website? And is it 100% new? Because new is not always better than reused. There is a misperception that the new components in some clones are better. In fact, certain companies will use substandard components to sell at the lowest price point. And certain remanufacturers use coatings and other improvements to increase yield or image density. Remanufacturing is now a science with 20 years of R&D behind it. And is it a new build cartridge? Remember, not all new build cartridges are bad and not all new build manufacturers are bad. NBCs may have a legitimate place in your product line. If the IP rights have expired or do they have STMC certification, and are they endorsed and supplied by a legitimate international ITC member? I look forward to a day when all cartridge producers around the globe are working together to reuse the maximum amount of the cartridge and supplementing it with great cartridge technology and IP vetting. But until that day, next slide, please. If you take nothing from this presentation, please take away these 2 points. The first is know your product. Price is only part of the equation. Remanufactured cartridges remain the safe legal alternative thanks to the right to repair. And as I said, I think they're the better choice because of their environmental benefits. OEMs have hundreds of patents at their disposal covering nearly every nuance of a cartridge, as well as the cartridge itself. And compatibles also can pose some serious health, safety, and security issues. And no new cartridge can compare its environmental benefits to those of the remanufactured ones. And then choose your partner wisely. With a playing field as murky and entangled as the imaging supplies industry, you can't go it alone. Pair with a partner for the long term and rely on their legal expertise and legal, environmental, health, and security issues. And go visit them. Like I said, go check them out. There's nothing better than face-to-face. I know we can't do that right now, and it's annoying, but when you get your vaccines and you're freed up, I encourage you to go visit, check out a couple of them. I'm sure that, the best of the best are happy to give you access and tours and talk about their many benefits. I was asked the new build cartridges, how can you tell the good ones from the bad ones? How can you tell the new build cartridges from clones? How can you tell the counterfeit from the new? That's a very tough call, but your partner can. Your partner should be able to tell you through a variety of intelligence that they gather what's poison and what's pure. So, go for the best. Partner with an international ITC member who sells STMC certified supplies, someone like Clover. So come into my Parlor in the right way. Come in as a member because we need your voice, and there is strength in numbers, or as a supporter of STMC, but not because you need my help as a defendant or an innocent infringer. Be safe and fly right. And thank you for joining me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Trisha. We do have a couple questions that came in towards the end. The first one we'll start is regarding STMC. Can a new build compatible manufacturer get an STMC certificate legitimately? And also, what's stopping the NBC clone makers from mimicking an STMC label?
Well, I'm going to answer the second one first. Me. I go to all the trade shows and I walk around with a list of who's, of STMC certifications, their expiration dates, their numbers. I went to the Zhuhai show a couple of years ago and pulled 32 companies. And, and to their credit, a good portion of them went through the process correctly, got STMC certified, and this is answering your next question. STMC certification is all about standardized testing. It doesn't have a bar, over which you say, okay, this is a good cartridge or this is a bad cartridge. It's just a way to prove that you're testing your cartridge the same way as other STMC certified companies, so whether it's got proper page yield, image density, backgrounding, those particular facets of the cartridge. We leave it up to our instructors as to who they will train and not train, because we can't be judge and jury as to who are good, good folks and bad folks. It's too gray of an area for us to handle. So STMC certification can be sought and secured by companies making build cartridges. However, if they are misusing that logo, I will fine them and I will penalize them.
Awesome. Thank you, Trisha. This next question is regarding the IITC. Do you have or currently support or have the ability to support Canadian members?
Absolutely. There's ITC Canada, which is under our umbrella too. And frankly, we've underrepresented Canada, and I'd like to fix that. I used to go up to Toronto once a year, and we'd hold a meeting and have a really interesting time. So if you're in Canada and you want to join, yes, we are also ITC Canada, and we even have a special logo for our Canadian members.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And we are getting close to our hour. So I did want to make mention that there were quite a handful of questions that came in that we weren't able to get to today. That's not to say that we're not going to address them. What we're going to do is we're going to publish a Q&A and email it out to all of our attendees. That way everyone can see all the questions that were answered or asked and their respective answer. But before we do wrap, I would like to once again thank Trisha on behalf of myself and on behalf of Clover. Additionally, I want to thank everyone in attendance for spending an hour with us. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And as a reminder, the Clover marketing team will send out this recording of our presentation for anyone who joined late, left early, or was unable to attend. So Trisha, once again, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
My pleasure.